Today, we have gathered here for the seminar titled Tweet4Climate, Role of Social Media for Climate Advocacy in Pakistan. I'll start with a quote from Bill McKibben, who is a climate activist. He said, and I quote, "The social media landscape is a place where change can happen at lightning speed." And I think we in Pakistan realize this point whenever we have to check what's happening in the political landscape or anything else. We scroll through the Twitter feed or even Facebook before we switch on our televisions to go through the news. So climate change has become an existential crisis. It's a global crisis, but it is becoming an existential crisis for everyone. Last year, we had the devastating floods in Pakistan, and we also realized the importance of social media when we got to know about the floods through Twitter before the floods were reported by the electronic media. So I think then there were Twitter spaces also. There, the hashtag that trended was floods in Pakistan, and after that, flood relief and flood 2022 that helped to spread the message globally, and people started following what was happening in Pakistan through Twitter, through Facebook, and through other platforms. So this seminar will explore the role of social media in climate advocacy in Pakistan, and with a focus on different strategies and tactics that have proven most effective. Today, we have been joined by the climate activists and people from different organizations who can provide us with recommendations on how we can effectively engage in the social media advocacy for climate action. So I'll introduce my panelists. We have been joined by Mr. Asad Baig. He's the Executive Director of Media Matters for Democracy, and Ms. Sidra Riaz. She is a lecturer, governance and public policy at NUML, and also a climate activist and a founder of Environmental Changemakers. Ms. Zainab Waheed, she is the climate activist and has represented Pakistan in different forums, such as a delegate. She was a delegate in C40 Summit. Mr. Ahmad Rafay has joined us online. Thank you so much for joining us. He's an environmental lawyer and also has been advocating for climate activists using his social media platforms. And we'll also be joined by Ms. Mehak Masood. She's the head sustainability and ESG at Artistic Milliners. She'll be joining us online. And we are also expecting to be joined by Mr. Muhammad Asim. He's the DG Cyber Wing at Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. Before I begin formally with the panelists, I'll request Dr. Abid Suleri, the Executive Director SDPI, for his opening remarks.
Thank you, Zainab. Good afternoon, distinguished panelists, dear students, that I can see mostly from NUML. Credit goes to Ma'am Sidra Riaz for bringing them here. And our panelist online, Rafay, sorry you had to wait online, and all those who are following us on Facebook, on Twitter, and LinkedIn. Well, today's seminar is about the power of social media, and power of social media I won't use the word counter, but somehow to contain another power, which is climate change. So if sitting here today, I'm asked what are the two nice power which apparently seem difficult to contain, I would, without any reluctance, would say that it's climate change and it is social media. And social media in some way is even more powerful. Out of the blue, any tweet, any post on social media, it becomes viral. And this power of atomization that actually binds civilization, and it binds the world for a common cause, and that cause can be anything. For example, if you look at this movement that was started in Sweden, this Friday for Change, of course, the Greta Thunberg, it was the power of social media that actually combined the whole world behind that many young activist. And of course, this is the power that we are talking of today. Now, in case of Pakistan, social media users, they actually represent a strong community. We have almost 47 million Facebook accounts. In Pakistan, we have around 6 million Twitter users. We have around 19 million Instagram users. And then there are many other platforms, which, of course, one need to look at the accurate number of the users. Now, consider, even if many of them, there are parallel forums, we have 50 to 60 million unique users, which can actually be a powerful force for creating awareness about climate change, which can be a powerful force to reinforce accountability and transparency in implementing our policies and practices. It's a powerful force to actually highlight whether our private sector and businesses, they are complying with many of the regulations which are issued from time to time or not. There are powerful force for you and I, if we are doing something, for example, if I'm washing my car with fresh water and spreading it all over the area, anyone can make a small video of it and they can viral it and they can name and shame me. And I think this naming and shaming, this is again more important. Of course, when we say that this is a powerful tool, there are some flip sides as well, some cons as well. We know that many a time rumors and fake news, those can be spread about climate change on this. And this is where again the climate activists who are active on social media, they become important because they are our truth finder and they can tell that what is actual accurate news and what is fake. And then social media, it also plays very important role for early warning to contain disasters. Now, if we say that Pakistan is one of the climate vulnerable countries, the type of disaster, the early warnings which can be disseminated through use of social media, they become very important. So in crux, all of you who are users of social media, you can actually use this very powerful tool to strengthen the public and private sector where they are doing right, to condone them. And you can use this tool to commend them, and you can use this tool to condone when they are not right. And you can also offer the alternatives. So commending what is right and questioning what is not right, and then proposing some alternative solutions. I think this is the contribution that this 50 to 60 million users on social media, they can do. And I'm a firm believer that if our generation Z, our millennials, if they can take anything as a common vision, then no one can stop it happening. But again, as I said, we have to use it in a positive manner, and we have to, when power comes, when we have authority, it also comes with responsibility. So being a responsible social media user, where we counter the fake propaganda and we actually create awareness about climate change and how to tackle it, how to contain it, that is what we need to do. And SDPI would provide every support in this matter, not only to different groups working on it, but to the students as well. Any sort of capacity building, any training, or the contents that you require, SDPI would be more than happy to provide it. Because when we say we need to come up with convincing, accurate facts, those have to be research-based. Yes, we need the rhetoric, we need activism, we need some passion, but we also require some figure and facts so that we can channelize our passion in a responsible manner. And SDPI would be happy to provide you with such research and such capacity building. I'll follow rest of the proceedings on my Facebook live stream. But thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much, sir, for discussing some of the effective ways through which we can use social media, such as making people accountable for if they're not, if they're degrading the environment or not, as Dr. Saab has mentioned, washing their cars with using fresh water, and also for early warning systems, and also to counter fake propaganda. So with this, I'll start with Sidra, first you. Since you are also very much active when it comes to the climate action and speaking about the problems that we have and the youth leadership and youth-led campaigns you have been part of. So I'll ask you, how did you become interested in this climate activism, and what platforms do you use for promoting the cause, and what challenges do you face when it comes to social media activism for climate action?
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Zainab, and the team for inviting me here. I hope I'm audible. Okay. I'm really surprised to see my students over here as well, and whatever I'll be speaking here would be from my own personal experience, which I had when Pakistan floods 2022 happened. So you asked that what actually brought me into this area and why I started activism. So as when Zainab was giving my introduction, she also told that I'm a lecturer at NUML. So when I joined in 2021, I got the chance to teach a subject known as environmental issues and management. Since I was freshly graduated at that time, and I was very passionate, and I don't wanted to only indulge my students in the theoretical knowledge and in the classroom activities. So I gave them a lot of projects on different environmental issues, and I wanted them to actually go out in field and experience to how to conserve the environment and how they can promote environmental education. So we were doing already different projects on climate change, deforestation, water scarcity, etc. And we were having already our social media pages through which we used to document all the information and provide it to the people. Last year in June, when Pakistan floods happened, since I was already linked to this area, I was reading it on different international forums. And what I actually observed that most of the mainstream media, or you can say the print media as well, electronic media, was not actually reporting it. And social media was not, nobody on social media was actually talking about that Pakistan is actually drowning, and people actually got to know about all that information in September, in the beginning of the September. So what I did, in the beginning of June, when Pakistan floods were actually happening, I actually searched few of the international channels or few of the international newspapers which were actually reporting on ground in Pakistan, or maybe through different authentic resources I studied. I started making posts using Canva. Most of the students over here actually know it is a graphic designing tool. I used Canva. I used to read on floods, and I used to make a post on different districts and different cities. The first post which I made was named as Balochistan is drowning. And it was in the early June, and it actually went so viral that it actually was shared by many politicians, many celebrities, etc., etc. And the second post I made was actually Sindh is underwater. Those posts were actually in the form of the closures, and most of the students over here, or the people over here, actually use Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And closure is sort of a post in which 8 to 10 pictures actually come, and you can click it and swipe it, and you can see the information. So those posts actually were information regarding any area which was actually flooded. And what I used to write in those, I used to actually write about what are the casualties, what are the possible ways through which you can actually donate to that area. And those posts actually started getting viral on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Instagram. So these are the three major social media platforms which I use. And then there were hundreds of posts which I and my team have made, and they were actually circulated on social media. So that's how I started. And the second question was about what were the challenges I faced. So most of the first of all, I would not like to actually tell you that I had many challenges. No, balki on the other side, I had a lot of opportunities. Nobody knew me before that. Maybe people knew me as an educationist or as a teacher who actually teaches at any university over here. This thing actually gave me the opportunity to actually raise my voice on certain platforms when I was actually contacted by Forbes magazine just after 2-3 months of actually posting and actually talking on climate change. So I would say that this thing has actually given me, the social media has actually given me the opportunity. I was invited by many news channels and I have never seen any news channel. I have never seen the camera before. So I never spoke on camera before. So talking on social media, making my page, and it went viral. It was followed by many celebrities, politicians actually gave me the chance to speak on different news channels, to speak on international magazines. And now I'm sitting over here. Maybe at one time, maybe a year ago, I was applying on an internship over here at SDPI, and maybe my application was even not shortlisted. So social media actually gave me the power to speak and the power to share my opinion. And of course, there were certain challenges. And one of the major challenges I faced was the misinformation available on social media. People are actually more interested in the buildings actually falling down. The Swat building falling down last year was actually went more viral as compared to the information which I was actually writing. What my focus was not to share actually disaster videos or disastrous pictures, because I think that creates stress among the youth. My posts were actually more sort of information. You can actually see it on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, named as environmental change makers. So the challenge I faced was that the videos which were actually showing the disasters actually used to go more viral as compared to what we were trying to do. But we kept on doing it, and it actually got a lot of audience as well. So that was one of the major challenges: the misinformation, or the things people were more interested into were more the things which triggered them more. And also, there were no support at that time. Since I was also new, my team was also new, so we were not having a lot of support from different NGOs or organizations or civil society initiatives. So there were certain challenges, but in the end, I would again say the opportunities are much more greater on social media as compared to the challenges you would face when you will start talking about anything you like. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sidra, for sharing and expressing your point of view and how you have been advocating and using social media with a scratch. Because as someone who is not a graphic designer, the first challenge is to create posts that are more engaging and, that will attract more audience. So I think that's a great success that you have achieved over time. With this, I would like to request Mr. Ahmad Rafay if he's with us.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us, sir, and for also waiting. And we are really happy to have you here. So I'll start with you. My question would be regarding, as we all know that there was a climate march, I think a few years back, and you advocated for that march using social media. There was that hashtag that trended, Climate Action PK, and you mobilized youth, and it was a big success. It was covered by international media as well. And, we realized that how much youth wanted to advocate for climate change through that march. So keeping that in context, my question would be, what was one key challenge that you faced when it comes to advocating for climate change? Being a lawmaker, how do you see the future of social media and climate advocacy, and what in the years have you observed that if it has gained momentum and if it is the right sort of momentum that we need in Pakistan? Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this conversation. I'll echo what has been said earlier about the obvious benefits of social media, the ability to read forecasts of weather. For example, I know today that it's going to rain in Karachi at the end of the week. And it's a slightly more than regular rain. So, Karachi is going to start bracing for flooding. So this can be helpful. And last year during the floods and actually during the heat waves, PK weather updates and others were actually very instrumental in even policy and decision makers learning about things. Of course, social media also brings to light, what's going on. Videos of climate events can be used to reach a much wider audience. I know that last year at the Conference of Parties at Sharm el-Sheikh, the Pakistani delegation had prepared a short video of the various climate shocks Pakistan had received in 2022. And a lot of the videos, a lot of the footage that video contained was actually social media driven. It was posts that people had made of rivers flowing their banks or other, rocks going through rivers and things. And it's very, very powerful viewing. Thank you for mentioning the climate strike of 2019. That was a surprise to a lot of us organizers, because hitherto, when we had done the one-off air pollution or other sorts of environment-related protests, there'd be a limited number of people that showed up, even in a big city like Lahore. But in the preparation of the climate strike of 2019, I need to give credit where it's due. We very much followed the playbook of Aurat March earlier that year, because the Aurat March of 2019 really changed, of 18 and 19 really leveraged social media to bring the message out. And the coordination using things like WhatsApp was also one of the core features of Aurat March, and remains so as well. And what we did, we had WhatsApp groups coordinating in different cities, and wound up having close to 30 WhatsApp groups, because there were 30 different cities in Pakistan where people came out for climate strike. And it was a clear indication, especially in Lahore, where several thousand people came out, even several thousand people came out in Islamabad, an indication of how much the subject resonates with younger people, very much so. But at the same time, I do remember walking from one point in Lahore to another point in Lahore with thousands of supporters carrying placards, but felt very wistful at the end of it, because nothing really came of it. We also, as activists, have to ask ourselves, what is the most beneficial means of engaging government or engaging the state? And social media activism is incredibly powerful. I'll give you that. If you have a good following, that's important. Also, it allows you literally front door access to decision makers. You can go and knock on ministers' doors, if so to speak, using social media. But translating that to direct action is something else. I want to remind everyone that one of the most successful civil society movements of the 20th century took place in India right after World War II, actually through the 30s and 40s, but culminated in partition. That was civil disobedience. It was so effective that Indians managed to get the largest colonialist empire out of their country. And it was so effective that it was borrowed then by Martin Luther King in the late 60s to then really drive the anti-segregation and anti-racist policies of America, and to convert them into legislation being far more equitable. And I'm pained to remind people that not too long ago in Pakistan, there was another form of civil society that came out in protest in relation to blasphemy, came out on the roads in several cities, and within 24 hours, the Prime Minister of Pakistan was on television, engaged with them. Now, I don't agree with violence. The big difference between what Gandhi and Martin Luther King did was non-violence. But these are other ways of engaging the state as well. And I know I'm veering off the territory of social media, but since you asked me about climate strike and the lessons learned from there, it really is that as activists, we have to ask ourselves, what is the best way to engage the state so that they listen? Because this is a subject we've already mentioned, it's existential, that people need to take seriously.
What lessons were learned out of that climate strike? I think that was the first time we actually had a march on an issue that required the attention. So I think it was not a complete failure, but it was successful because we were able to, to realize, to create that realization among people in Pakistan that this is an issue that requires an attention. I wish we have the same kind of advocacy again, and where the public sector engages more with the people and mobilize these kind of events. Because I remember in America, there were movements when environmental activism gained momentum in America. There was a group of people who marched just to stop the cutting down of the red trees there, because they wanted to construct a road, and they marched and they protested, and they had to protect the trees, and that's how they constructed the road so that they are not able to cut down the trees. I wish we get the same sort of momentum here in Pakistan as well. Thank you so much. I'll be coming back to you for another question, but now I'll move to Mr. Asad. Sir, my question would be, how has social media changed the landscape of climate reporting and advocacy in Pakistan? And what are some of the most important trends you have observed in recent years?
Thank you. And also thank you for giving me the space for excellent interventions by Rafay and Sidra. It's difficult to keep up with that, but I'll try my best. And I will also take a slightly different take on the social media, because I, frankly speaking, don't share the optimism of Suleri Saab. I frankly don't think that social media is a power that you can use. I think the social media is a challenge that you need to deal with. And I'll tell you why. Anyone in this audience, have you, just happened to see this movie, which is called Don't Look Up on Netflix?
Yeah.
Who has seen that? Just out of curiosity. Yeah, so that's the kind of narrative that we need to deal with. That's the kind of challenges that we are talking about. Bruce Lee once said, and it's his very famous quote, that bricks don't hit back. So essentially, we are not talking about a power which does not hit back. We are talking about a power which is powered by the money from the corporations, which is very, very organized in creating climate disinformation. We are not talking about fancy memes or innocent jokes by youngsters. We are talking about massive disinformation created by the funding coming from the corporations that we are dealing with. So frankly speaking, just by making a video of somebody washing a car might not create that kind of dent that we are looking for in climate advocacy. I'll just share some examples why this skepticism that I have and why it's kind of rooted in social media. Before that, in 2015, I conducted a research on assessing why and how Pakistani media covers climate reporting, climate issues in general. And we found out that of all the content that was created, about 0.7% was on climate. 0.7%, this was in 2015. And it's a published research. So the point I'm trying to make is that clearly mainstream media is not a medium that we can pin our hope on. The social mediums, like Sidra pointed out, she's one of the, I would say, great examples of activism on climate in Pakistan. That's our hope. But what are the challenges that we have to deal with? Number one, the corporations, the platforms, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Now, what are they doing? I'll just give you a quick example. In 2022, Twitter banned misleading climate change ads, right? But then also in the same year, a research by University of London found out that the massive amount of tweets, more than the last year, on the climate misinformation were recorded on Twitter. Similarly, YouTube, they banned similar ads, quote unquote, on Google. They banned ads on YouTube. Whereas a Washington Post story says that they found about 15 posts on YouTube on a very basic search where they found ads leading to climate misinformation. Now, this is the challenge we are talking about. Who will put these companies, these corporations to accountable, and can we even do that? Now, as there are various ways of going about this challenge of misinformation that I'm talking about. And frankly, I haven't really even touched upon the climate misinformation route. Right now, I'm only talking about the platform accountability. So one is this that we are doing, right? The civil society interactions and engagements and so on. So we speak to people in the Facebook and we speak to people in the Google and so on and so forth. We do that on a daily basis. As a digital rights activist, I can tell you that we stay in touch with Facebook. We try to get in touch with these platforms as much as we can. Does that matter? No. The last time we were having this conversation with, and I don't want to name the mission, but one of the biggest missions in Pakistan. And we told them that, look, we need to make this happen. We need to make the social media companies accountable. And they said, we are trying the same thing, so don't worry about it. Yeah, so we'll tell you when we succeed. And this is one of the biggest missions in Pakistan that I'm talking about. So this is the kind of challenge that we are frankly dealing with right now when it comes to climate misinformation. Once again, creating a video that goes viral, great. I'm sure a lot of people, great people like Sidra and others did a great job in the floods in Pakistan. But that was, if you compare the climate misinformation, that was only a momentary ink in the system. It's not the way it happens. You create anything right now about climate, and I see how it goes viral. Obviously, it wouldn't. Like she pointed out, the dramatic effect, quote unquote, the drama or the kind of the emotion that misinformations can trigger, information can never trigger. So, and the other challenge that we have to deal with, I'm just sorry if I'm taking a longer time than others, just to point out. One thing that we need to work on, and this is, by the way, the government's job, to make the social media companies accountable, yes, but also make the people who are consuming this information, misinformation from the platforms more or less rather palatable. So there is this theory, and this is a very interesting theory. I've been reading up on it. It's called the theory of inoculation. It kind of works pretty much like any other vaccine, a medical vaccine would work. And the idea is to make your people or citizens of any country immune, quote unquote, to misinformation, or less or to make them less receptive to misinformation. And this has been in the public for a while now. In 2018, it's been 5 years. 2018, World Economic Forum came up with this statement that misinformation is one of the biggest dangers for human society in the world, human society. 2018. My question to the government is, what have we done since then? Have we ever tried testing the inoculation theory in Pakistan? By the way, it worked really well in the COVID. Basically, all what the primary media and the social media and the peripheral media was doing during the COVID was making use of this inoculation theory by telling people how the COVID is spread, by telling people to mask up and so on, right? And that worked. Our research shows we have conducted various surveys, and we have published researches, by the way. Our research shows that the people were buying that information from the mainstream media. Have we tested that inoculation theory when it comes to climate activism or climate misinformation? Obviously not. And what does that say about us as a country or as policymakers? So I'll stop here and let me know if I can sort of add more to this.
Thank you so much. This is something very interesting, the theory of inoculation. I think we should be recommending this to our public sector organizations as well, who are also not able to tackle the situation of misinformation, whether it's regarding climate change or anything else on social media platforms. So my next question would be from Mehak. Mehak, if you're with us. Is she there?
Yes.
Thank you, Mehak, for joining us today. Since you are working on sustainability and ESG practices, so to you, my question is, how do you think the organizations can get the required skills, for advocating best sustainable practices on social media? And do you think when it comes to the ESG reporting, the social media outreach of an organization matters in that context?
Thank you. As you explained, and I was listening to the other panelists, I believe that's my work as well, reporting, disclosure, and communication. So I had a lot of pressure in my daily work routine that whatever we are doing, we need to advocate in a very subtle way and a right way, because it's the sustainability is the new, because I am in a business of in exporters, and we have to deal with international brands. So now they don't judge you. The criteria for brand is not just the quality of products and everything, but now sustainability, climate action, forest stewardship, women rights, everything. How the organization is factoring that in. This is one of the point of their concern as well, and also they have put certain weightages of their businesses that they will only work with those organizations. They will only buy from those organizations who are factoring that in their systems. And for that, we really need to, whatever we do, we really need to portray that on the social media platforms in a very effective manner, not overboard, not underboard. So, and whatever interventions we are doing, advocacy, be it a circular park we are installing, we are devising a new technology, it's a new wind farm, whatever affair we are doing on climate mitigation or climate adaptation, we need to showcase that in a very effective manner to the social media. Not Twitter and Facebook for first, LinkedIn is more one of the professional work, but Twitter is also one of a very effective medium. Secondly, you explained about ESG reporting and disclosure. So yes, that ESG disclosures are for public, and they needed to be, I mean, the organization making reports, that means it's a public disclosure of their data. So that's really important, and that's also very much important consideration for businesses at the moment, be it internationally or local. Everyone is sustainability, climate action. These are all things which also is the business attributes for a company.
Thank you, Mehak, for the point of view. So I think you're absolutely right. Now, ESG, I know it's a bit controversial process as well. ESG, carbon credits, the core environmentalists would not support the process, and they, I think that's a very challenging job that you have taken up now. So I wish you best of luck, and I'll be coming back to you for another question. But before that, I would like to ask my next question from Zainab. Since you represented Pakistan in different forums, and you have been engaged in youth-led campaigns, I believe, as well. So how do you think we can use the social media platforms, and what platforms you think could be more helpful to amplify the voices of youth and to generate the intergenerational debates on climate change?
This one's working. Thank you very much for the question, Zainab. Hi, everyone. My name is Zainab. I am a climate activist and having represented Pakistan at 3 different international forums as of yet by the age of 17. I am having derived all my activism from social media, and that I have a verified Twitter account. So I think I can bring a youth perspective to the current discussion at the table. I think when we look at the status quo, we see a ragtag teenager on TikTok, for example, on any social media platform. They can make a 30-second video or say 15-second video, and it goes viral and has the impact that many funded, properly led campaigns don't. And that is the impact one individual can have using social media. Now imagine if this power and this potential of social media is properly funded through a proper organization. Imagine the level of impact that would have. And in the status quo, when more than half of the population of the world is youngsters, people under the age of 30, and yet the average age of parliamentarian is 53, that is the disparity we face as youngsters today. And that is the disparity we need to counter. So in order to include youth voices in political decision-making as well as climate policy decision-making, that would, and also not only youth, but also other stakeholders like indigenous people or people most impacted, first-hand impacted by climate change, women, racial and gender minorities, all of them, they are stakeholders who need to be taken on board for climate advocacy, climate planning, climate decision-making. That to include them would take structural changes, managerial changes, but in order to get a quick and effective way to include their voices, social media is a very powerful tool. And I completely agree with the misinformation point that was raised. And I genuinely do believe that nobody is voiceless. You just need to pass on the mic. And that is what we as youth are asking for. Misinformation, I need to come to that point. I think that struck a chord in me as well. When we talk about misinformation, everything that was said here, I absolutely agree. But we also need to go back to the source of this misinformation. Where is this misinformation coming from? Who are the propagators and perpetrators and beneficiaries of this misinformation? That is fossil fuels industries. Those are the climate criminals and people who feed off of climate change, and they just don't care what their profiteering what impacts their profiteering has on the world. And for people like you and I who live in developing countries, who will first be impacted by their crimes, and we will pay for their development, the global north, developed countries, as well as fossil fuels industries. Those are the climate criminals who have not now, but since the last century, since 1990s, their own scientists were the first people to ever discover that climate change was happening, and that needs to be stopped. But they propagated their propaganda of climate denial and climate misinformation has seeped into our governments, our institutions, our financial institutions, our educational institutions, and now in social media. And that is where we get this misinformation from. And the influence and the power that these climate criminals have is what's stopping this misinformation from impacting each and every one of us. And this is why in 2015, 0.7 of our media, our own media, was talking about climate change. And I tell you what, I get interviewed by Pakistani media channels every other day. I've also been interviewed by BBC thrice. I've been on their live panel, and I see a difference when we talk to international media channels. I do see the people, the moderators, the climate experts. I talk to them, and I see a difference in the way I talk to media over here. In segments, in programs, on TV channels that are talking about climate today, I've been to say 10 channels, 15 channels. There is a huge difference. Their information, their talk, their suggestions, their solutions are very basic. That's not the basic level that we should be on in 2023, when floods are affecting us already, and they will continue to affect us in the coming years. This year we will have huge heat waves, and this will continue to worsen, and there's just no escape except for stopping climate criminals and misinformation now. So I think that's what I have to say. And you talked about how we can, the government, what the government can do, what we as individuals can do. Yes, there are risks of using social media for talking about such an important thing, but there are also benefits. We can have climate experts and people who have the authority and the credibility to talk about it. We can have them talk about it. We can, the government or civil society organizations, NGOs, they can all get together and have a strong will to solve this problem. And the first way to, instead of having complete silence where nobody talks about climate change just because they fear misinformation, I think talking somewhat about climate is way better than complete absolute pin drop silence. And that's, I can elaborate on it more when you come to me next.
Thank you so much, Zainab. I think you have pointed out the root cause of misinformation, the climate denialism, and the climate criminals who are responsible for this brainwashing that we have been facing now in Pakistan as well. So with this, if I have you with me, Rafay, I would like to ask a very pertinent question. I did a tweet a few days ago. Usually, I'm active on Twitter with not much following, but my tweet gets 2 to 3 retweets. But that tweet did numbers. But a few years ago, when I tweeted about the same thing, people did not retweet it. People did not realize. But now I tweeted, and it has more than 15K impressions on Twitter. So I got surprised. I tweeted about some society, causing a waste dump in the river Sawa and all. So I named and shamed it, and it got so many retweets. So, and I also mentioned a few years ago, when I named and shamed a society, it did not get any retweets at all. So I think that's the kind of stance that we are observing now. It's changing. So social media is actually changing the stance, and people are realizing the problem. But the issue is, how do we manage, as Zainab has mentioned, we have climate criminals. Yeah, we do have climate criminals in the global north, but we have climate criminals here in Pakistan as well, whom we do not talk about much. We cannot name and shame them openly or publicly. We have to avoid using their names. But how do we manage and tackle that using our law? We have Pakistan Environmental Protection Act, but since the beginning, since the 1973, our constitution has been having so many amendments, but I've never seen anybody talking about Pakistan Environmental Protection Act or any amendment or any update in the act, So in that context, I would like you to comment on that, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll speak about the law in just a second. But I think that point about Pakistani climate criminals is an important one, because we're very familiar with the mainstream climate discourse, quite often perfectly symbolized by the person of Greta Thunberg, where you have the big fossil fuel polluters like Shell and Saudi Aramco and countries of the global north that need to drastically ramp down their greenhouse gas emissions. And I'll just point out, by the way, Saudi Aramco just posted a $161 billion profit last year, and Shell posted a $33 billion profit last year. The Shell's profit from just one year could help Pakistan reconstruct and get back on its feet from the damage it suffered, the devastation it suffered during the floods just last year. Just one company, 1 year's profits. So the climate criminals are pretty well defined, as it were. They're the major greenhouse gas emitters. But at some level, it doesn't work the same way within Pakistan. And it has to do a little bit with the fact that Pakistan's overall greenhouse gas emissions are negligible compared to what some of the larger players are doing today or have done so historically. But that doesn't mean we don't have climate criminals. You have to appreciate that climate change impacts the global south much differently than where the discourse emanates from in the global north. For example, we're quite often told, and perhaps rightly, that one of the major consequences of climate change in Pakistan is going to be an impact on water resources. So water is many times said to be Pakistan's climate challenge. Now, if this is the case, I just want to quote from the 2018 National Water Policy, which says that slightly over 90% of the water that is in Pakistan is used in agriculture. And then the remaining 8% is between industrial use and domestic use. I don't know how accurate this figure is, because we've been hearing this for the last, as far as I've been studying water and environment for the last 2 decades, this figure has remained pretty much static at 92%. But Bahra, let's assume it's correct. And we know that Pakistan produces 4 main agricultural products. It's wheat, it's cotton, it's sugar, and it's rice. Now, let's look at these things. It takes about 2,000 liters of water to make a kilo of rice. It takes about 8,000 liters of water to make a pair of denim jeans. And we export these things right out of the country. Cotton export is one of the backbones of the Pakistani economy. And we actually export more rice out of Pakistan than we actually consume it inside Pakistan. And look at sugar, which is a huge water-intensive crop, which is consumed in Pakistan. But one of its byproducts of the sugar process is molasses, which is another type of food, but not something really that the South Asian palate has taken to. And it's not a very, as they said, it's not a very profitable food to be in. However, if you can process the molasses, if you can distill it, you can make something known as ethanol. And if they're under 100 sugar mills, I think they're between 90 to 100 sugar mills in Pakistan. And on the backs of these sugar mills, the molasses they produce, there are 24 ethanol plants. 24. And I know the statistics from 2020, the year of the pandemic. These 24 ethanol plants. Now, ethanol is food-grade alcohol. We don't consume it here unless you have a special license to manufacture it. So we export all of this ethanol abroad. And in 2020, in the year of the pandemic, these 24 companies exported over $400 million worth of ethanol outside Pakistan. So if Pakistan is facing a water crisis as the result of the climate change, I want to ask the Rice Exporters Association of Pakistan what the hell they're doing. I want to ask the textile people what on earth they're doing, and the sugar industry what they're doing, because we're taking all of our water, 90% of it, and handing it to a few industries who are exporting this water out of Pakistan and making immense amounts of profits. And I'll remind you also that the textile and the sugar industry, pound for pound, are some of the most polluting industries in Pakistan as well. So yes, we have our own climate criminals, and I think we just need to understand how climate change plays out in Pakistan, and we can identify them and name them and shame them much better. Now, coming to your point about law, Pakistan's constitution doesn't have much to say about environmental rights, but mostly because it was conceived in the early 1970s when the entire international discussion on environmental rights was still in infancy, so to speak. But we've had many judicial decisions since, including the famous Sheila Zia versus Wabda in 1994, which interpreted the right to life to include the right to a clean and healthy environment. And so while our constitution might not say specific things about the environment, the courts have definitely interpreted the right to life to include the right to a clean and healthy environment. On the back of that, then we had the federal legislation of the environment in 1997. And then in between 2010 and 12, during the period of the 18th Amendment, when the responsibility of governing the environment was devolved to the provinces, all 4 provinces and even Azad Jammu and Kashmir have all passed legislations, their own provincial legislations on the environment. And most of these, I mean, all of these provincial legislations are within 95 to 97% copies of the old Federal Act. I'll give you that much. But we do have provincial legislation that took place between 2012 and 2014. I also want to point out that Pakistan is one of the few countries in the world that actually has a Climate Change Act. In 2017, the National Assembly of Pakistan passed the Pakistan Climate Change Act, which conceives of a climate change council headed by the Prime Minister and also includes all the 4 chief ministers of the provinces. And this council is responsible for passing or approving climate change policy in Pakistan. And at the same time, this act also conceives of a climate change authority, a federal authority that will implement the policies approved by the Climate Change Council. Now, the law was passed in 2017, and I think Abid Saab and myself have been members of the council since then, but it's only met once, and that was in last September before COP. So while we're repeatedly told by our politicians that Pakistan is under immense risk and vulnerability of climate change, the one legal platform that we have established by law, by the vote of the elected representatives of our country, the one legal forum has never been convened properly. Similarly, the National Climate Change Authority, which is supposed to implement these policies, hasn't been manned. It hasn't been notified. It doesn't exist except on paper. I mean, it's been nearly 6 years since this law was passed. And I think our politicians are showing just how important they think this topic is by dragging their feet on implementing these laws.
Thank you so much for pointing out the very important aspect of the laws and policies that we have in Pakistan. We are really good at papers, but I wish we get good at implementing those laws as well. With this, I'll come to you, Mr. Asad, for a very important point that being a citizen of the country, I have observed the media, the electronic media, it doesn't give much importance to such issues like climate change, because we follow media. The electronic media is something that is being followed everywhere in Pakistan now, I believe. Even in the remote areas, they at least have a television and they can tune in to watch what's happening. They do not cover this important aspect the way it should be covered. It doesn't get the prime time. Usually the morning shows, they get it. They can invite people like Sidra, they can invite Zainab, they can even invite anyone else to highlight the issue. But the prime time doesn't get climate change covered the way it should be. And even if on social media it gets covered, the kind of reporting, it's a challenge, I believe. The sensationalism that should or should not be there. As Sidra mentioned, that she does not post the disasters video because she believes it is going to cause stress. So how do you think these kind of challenges, can be addressed? What sort of capacity building, or how can we engage our media to cover the aspect of climate change the way it should be covered in Pakistan?
Thank you again. This is a very difficult question, and I wish I had more time, but let me see what I can do. So I think in partial, the answer has been, the question has been answered by Rafay. So when he was talking about the climate criminals, quote unquote, of Pakistan, in my mind, I was thinking about, okay, these are also the biggest advertisers of the mainstream television or the journalism media. And for that, in general, you need to understand a bit of how the media economy is shaped in Pakistan. And I'm sure there are people in this room who understand that. Again, at least in media's mind, there are quote unquote some soft issues and some serious issues. In many ways, they understand and they think climate or take climate to be a soft issue. And it's very easy for somebody or any channel to invite, let's say, XYZ people in the morning shows and talk about, oh, what can be done? Or you were representing XYZ country or Pakistan abroad, and let's to talk about it. But it's almost completely impossible for the mainstream media to do serious journalism when it comes to climate reporting. And the reasons are very obvious because, where else would they get the ads from? There is some very interesting data published by, every year they publish this data. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting this name. There's a publication by Dawn, Aurora. Yes, Aurora magazine, which is owned by the Dawn group. Every year they publish this data and they sort of list down the top advertisers of the mainstream media. I wish I had that data right now. Just open up the recent their publication and just see what are the top advertisers. You'll find that they're all the same that Rafay was mentioning in his conversation, number one. Number two, the climate issue is almost never seen in isolation and shouldn't be seen in isolation. And there are many, many intersectional sort of things happening. For instance, Rafay also mentioned Aurora March. And I say that gender has a lot to do, and this would commonly, this is not understood, but I think gender has a lot to do when it comes about climate advocacy. So look at the people who the quote unquote, the climate criminals are hiring, influencers, Andrew Tate, right? Or all the other idiots who believe in masculinity, the idea of this idea of who has the fastest car, for instance, right? And who's doing more revs, or the three idiots used to do Top Gear from the BBC network. They were airing it from BBC network, and they would very often say that they don't give a damn about the same crew and so on. So what the point I'm trying to make is that it's very important when it comes to climate advocacy that we not just focus on the mainstream media, as you rightly pointed out, but we also try and challenge it. It's very difficult. Let me also say that it's very difficult, but also try and challenge in some, in some way these intersectionalities and the kind of resources that some of these climate criminals have deployed to support them. I'm very happy that Andrew Tate was called back for what he did to Greta, and he had a taste of it very nicely. But there are a million other Andrew Tate right now who are pretty much doing the same thing. And one would think, where are they getting their Bugattis from? Where are they getting their $1 million from? And it's very obvious where they get it all from. Again, it's not going to be that easy that one viral video will just sort of tackle this kind of challenge, specifically when we are talking about $1 billion in the back of sort of, this advocacy and this propaganda.
Thank you. Before I open the floor for questions, I would like to request Sidra, Zainab, and Mehak to share one piece of advice that you think that the youth in Pakistan, how they can use the social media effectively for climate advocacy, and how we can, fight this misinformation and biases that we have to face whenever we are advocating for climate action in Pakistan. So one piece of advice, I'll start with you, Sidra.
Thank you, Zainab. Before giving an advice, I would like all the youngsters sitting over here to actually know what climate change is and how it is affecting Pakistan, and why Pakistan is a country which is most vulnerable by these disasters which are happening due to climate change. So I particularly made a post at how Pakistan floods are actually linked to climate change, and most of the people actually commented on it, and they didn't even knew that what climate change is and how it is bringing so many disasters in Pakistan. So only 3 million out of 220 million people in Pakistan actually get the chance to sit in higher education universities. So the students sitting over here should already know that they are the privileged ones, which are actually getting the chance to study in a university, either it is a public university or a private university. So you are the ones who are already privileged and had the chance to study on higher education institutes. So first, you need to aware yourself before you actually want to do something that is related to advocating climate change. If you have an interest, only then you can advocate, right? You cannot advocate on something which you do not have an interest on or which you do not have a knowledge on. So first, I would say start reading on it, start studying on it, and it is important for you because it is affecting your own country. 33 million people, if last year was affected, the people were actually among us. They were actually from the provinces where we belong to. So my advice would be, before moving on to social media, start studying on it, start gaining knowledge. And then definitely when you will have an interest, you will be more focused on and you will get a lot of chances to speak on it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, Zainab, what advice would you like to give to the youth?
I think the major takeaway the youth could have from this conversation is that they have the power to bring change to some capacity. So in recent times, we saw how there is a lot of awareness regarding fast fashion and how unsustainable the fashion industry is. And so as a result of that, we have Times Magazine and so many different organizations working towards reversing or discouraging fast fashion and calling out brands like Shein, who produce clothing that is cheaper than a slice of pizza, and then that clothing is so disposable it ends up in landfills, which is propagating climate change to a great extent. And what led to that was advocacy and awareness among the youth, who demanded a change, who demanded clean fashion, who demanded sustainably sourced clothing and called out greenwashing. So this is how the awareness that Sidra is talking about could lead to traceable, feasible, on-table change. So that would be my message, that use that awareness for sustainable and for systemic changes.
Thank you. Yes, Mehak, what piece of advice would you like to share with the youth regarding using social media effectively or climate advocacy in Pakistan?
I think the social media is the new communication models for your own learn effectively how they can use that social media and what kind of message they are trying to portray. I see there's like, it's as everyone was explaining, that it's a direct connection to anyone. It's like to do not only national level, but as a global leaders, you can even reach out to them through Twitter. So voice around the concern. And for this first time, when I was a student and I was studying, there was not much room for us to do this advocacy work. But now I've seen that people, everyone, even a simple layman, also know about climate change. They're aware about the consequences. So correct information should be propagated, and youth is the only agent of change that can bring things happen. They need to make their accompanying and coherent voice when it comes to the policymakers, to the implementers, to enablers, and that's because this is in their hands. They have Twitter, they have spaces. They need to also whatever they are putting up, like if it's do it with a verifiable reference resource. Easy way things is like IPCC reports, UN studies are there. There are other organizations who are sending out different, climatic facts and figures. So retweet them, give your voice, make an issue which is you see, and combine with that fact, and then tweet that. So, using different tricks to engage to increase their engagement. And also it's really important for our branding as a country as well, that our youth is focused on such areas. If there is an event of on climate change or something, be very vigilant. Also share your achievements as well, whatever you are doing to save the planet. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mehak. So I believe we have questions from students and different people here as well. So I request if you can introduce yourself first and keep your comments and questions brief, and also point out whom do you want from the panelists to answer your questions. And we have different questions from Mr. Ahmad, Rafay online as well. So we'll be taking them. So okay, in the first round, I'll take your question, sir, yours, and yours, and then we'll come back for the second round. Ji.
Thank you, Ms. Zainab. I'm Abid Malik, environmental journalist from APP. It's a general question to all the panelists. I see Climate Action March every year, But I see a very great difference. There are 424 government schools in Islamabad. Not a single student from those schools come to that march. Why? What is the weak link and what is the missing link? Why our advocacy, our climate activism is restricted to a certain circle? Are they not affected equally as they have? I'm a Pindiite. I've seen a huge shift in the environment of this city. I have heard the stories of the greener and the lush green and very clean and calm city of Pindi, but now it's no more that kind of city. It's more like a dustbin now. So are not that people more affected? Why those people are not joining your actions, your activities? So how will you shape those minds to be more sensitized, to come to your events, to be your on supporting tools, your path in climate action? Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, you can ask.
Assalamu alaikum to everyone. I am Ahmad, Chief Executive Qaiyum International, Pakistan and Canada. I'm also consultant of Education Development Bank, specifically in climate. You can say the part of the climate nut. I do appreciate all the panelists specifically who pointed out the problems and activities going on the ground regarding climate and other things. My question is that we all are working, talking and writing, researching everything we are doing on the paper. What is our follow-up on the ground? If some researcher work on their research, it's take a lot of time because I'm also a researcher as well. But my subject is better different on the defense. But anyways, research is very difficult work. It's not easy job. So once research is completed on any topic, is there any researchers have demanded that what is the outcome of his or her research? No. Secondly, we have spent a lot of money on establishing a lot of setups just to show off, not to work. We have Ministry of Climate Change. We have Environment Protection Authority. We have a lot of divisions and lot of authorities who are working provincial level, city level, district level, and so many. There's a lot of change. There are thousands people are working and enjoying cars and everything without doing anything. I'm sorry to say. So why we should not going after that? Because think tanks and research centers and researchers, they have some value. They have to do something for some purpose. It is not just sitting and working and out. There must be some result, some outcome. If nothing is going on, they should lock out their research centers, close their research papers and say the government, sorry, we don't want to do anything. If you don't work on our suggestions and advices, we are not going to write even a single word. We will be going to earn the money. Let's go for any society purpose. Let's go for property dealing and let's go for something else from which we can earn money. Sorry for my hard words. Secondly, Madam Sidra was talking about that there's a lot of work is going on, and first I would like to comment on Asad Saab. You are talking about that we are working, researching a lot and working, doing this and that, but we don't have the funding. There's no support from government or from any authority. So the problem is that most of our nation, they don't want to work. Unfortunately, under the same forum, there was a seminar, there was a launching ceremony in Marriott Hotel, and a lot of iconic personalities were there who told us to suggest that they are working on climate change and all that. That was launching ceremony of WASH.
Well, I'll request if you can please.
These are very important. Just last one. So they are offering $6 million per year to whole the world to work on climate change and give their research to work on. India has gained $34 million, Bangladesh $14 million, and Pakistan has just used $7 million, just nothing. So there are a lot of things. So I have banned from Madam Zainab. So let me close my fact here. These are more than enough. I think my questions are. So I would like to, so the last one, just a few seconds. I'm also a president of Greater Peace and Harmony Foundation that is registered in UK and Pakistan. And we are working on climate change, and we are also funding on climate change. So if someone wants to work on climate change, they can be part of our team and we can support them in all respects. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your comment. Last question from this round, and then we'll take answers, and then we can get back to the other people who want to ask you.
Thank you very much for giving me a chance. I'm Sajid Hussain Malik, worked as Senior Researcher in the Ministry of Law and Legal Advisor to the Jammu Kashmir Council. I have also worked on this subject. I will express myself, if you allowed, in Urdu. Basically, मसला इस वक्त ये है कि नेचर जो है वो एक खूबसूरत चीज है, जो भी उसे टकराएगा वो तबाह हो जाएगा। नेचर ये है कि आप झील सैफुल बुलूक को देखें 30 साल पहले, अपना चेहरा नजर आता था। अब जो है वो इतनी पोल्यूशन हो गई है कि अब हर जगह पे पाकिस्तान में ही हमारी अपनी वो गलतियां हैं। मैं समझता हूँ जिस तरह आपने सोशल मीडिया और फेसबुक इधर वगैरह दिया, मैं समझता हूँ सबसे बड़ा जो असरअंदाज हो सकता है वो मस्जिद का मौलवी हो सकता है, जो जुम्मे को खुतबा देता है। आप यकीन करेंगे, आप उन्हें अगर ब्रीफ कर दें कि कोर्सेज कराएं, उसकी मैं मिसाल दे रहा हूँ। मैंने मस्जिद में, मैं बहुत सेंसिटिव हूँ, पूरी टूटी खुली होती है उसमें जब वजू करते हैं, और इस्लाम कभी इजाजत नहीं देता किसी चीज का भी जाया होने का। बल्कि मैं आपको इससे दिलचस्प बात बताऊं, हुजूर सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम की हदीस है, वो कहते हैं कि आदमी को प्यास लगी है, वो दरिया में से गिलास निकालता है, पानी आधा पीता है, उसकी प्यास बुझ जाती है, उसे हुक्म है कि वो पानी बाहर ना फेंके, दरिया में वापस फेंके। और आप इससे अंदाजा लगाएं, मैं कल अखबार में पढ़ रहा था कि दुबई जो है 3रा साल लगातार है और वो क्लीन सिटी का उसे अवार्ड मिला है। फिर हम अपनी तरफ देखते हैं तो हम जो पोल्यूशन और गंदगी के ममालिक हैं, पहले 5 ममालिक में से। तो हमें, मैं जब आजाद जम्मू कश्मीर काउंसिल था उस वक्त मैंने एक पेपर बनाया था, वो ये बनाया था कि जब चश्मों से कश्मीर से पानी आता है तो कितना खूबसूरत होता है, और मुजफ्फराबाद से ही उसमें गंदगी कूड़ा क्रिकेट फेंकना शुरू कर देते हैं। उसमें मैंने ड्राफ्ट भी किया था, मैंने कहा कम से कम यहाँ से तो क्लियर पानी देना, वो ठीक है कराची तक पहुंचेगा जो भी होगा। मैं सही समझता हूँ कि जो मस्जिद है उसकी वजह से अगर आदमी ब्रीफ करे लोगों को, क्योंकि आम कॉमन पीपल को नहीं पता क्लाइमेट चेंज, किसी से पूछ लें आप ये, और इसका सिर्फ यही है हमें खुद फील हो कि ये हमारी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी अपने आप को फील करें कि हम क्या काम कर सकते हैं, उन्हें आदात दें छोटी छोटी सी, जिस तरह मैंने आपको पानी की रिजर्व का बताया। थैंक यू वेरी मच।
थैंक यू सो मच जी। I'll start with the panelists. आप response करना चाहिए जी।
I'll respond to the question as to why is it that the climate advocacy is only limited to a certain group of people or certain class of people and a certain group of schools and not the government schools. I think the problem comes in when our education system does not talk about climate change from grassroots levels, from the lower grades and lower classes, and there is no concept by the time they graduate metric. I was talking to one of my friends from another city who was doing matriculation, and I asked her about her opinions on climate, and she was very dismissively like, oh yes, I studied it at one point in time, but now I've forgotten it because I've given it my exams and I don't need that information anymore. So that is how structurally dismissive our educational system is of climate issues. And secondly, there is a problem in the language barriers in climate information as well. So this entire seminar was in English, whereas our national language is Pakistan. And fancy terms, I won't say fancy, but climate jargon, say climate litigation, climate finance, climate justice, all of these are terms that even native English speakers might not understand if they don't have awareness about climate. So say this to a Pakistani person who only understands Urdu, they would not understand the gravity of this issue. So I think the the problem comes in when we don't have apt translations for these climate jargon words in Urdu. And secondly, in our education system, there is a very pertinent need to introduce climate concepts from early levels on.
Yeah, just 2 quick points. One, a clarification, sir. We are a media development organization, and so the research that we do is usually focused on the media consumption patterns and misinformation and so on. And we usually have enough funding that we need for that kind of research. So we are kind of working on a separate sort of line, but obviously it's intersectional, and climate misinformation is a big part of what we are working on. So it obviously, it comes into play. The second thing that we were talking about that I said that the government needs to play their part in is the social media companies' accountability.
Now that, unfortunately, cannot really be left alone to the civil society organizations. We are not that big.
We cannot do that. And the government is only looking at the social media companies
from the lens of
censorship, or from the lens of regulation, or from the lens of politics and free speech.
But they're not really looking at them when it comes to climate misinformation or misinformation in general.
The second part of my conversation, when I said the inoculation
theory, that kind of resources that you need, I don't think any international donor, quote unquote, can manage that.
That needs to,
or even if they can, that
kind of effort needs to come from the government of Pakistan. And they need to understand that this is extremely important when they talk about it.
Number one. Number two, I think what Zainab was talking about is extremely important.
And that's perhaps why we have still not popularized this kind of conversation. And मैं उर्दू में ये कहूँगा because I feel more close to it when I say it in Urdu. ये हमारा सारा NGOs का problem है कि हम ज़्यादातर हमारी कोशिश होती है कि हम अपने donors को समझाने की कोशिश कर रहे होते हैं और हम जिन लोगों को target कर रहे हैं उनको समझाने की कोशिश नहीं कर रहे होते. I also am the executive director of an NGO, so I'm saying this very consciously and very knowing what I do and we do as an organization. आधी से ज़्यादा हमारी research publication जो कि लोगों को पढ़ने के लिए होती हैं, सहाफ़ियों के लिए होती हैं, वो अंग्रेजी में होती है. And when you see the kind of media that we have,
Urdu versus English, तो वो बहुत
clear, आपको चीजें नजर आती हैं. So that needs to be popularized. And also Twitter, I keep hearing Twitter. Twitter is really not the future of the social media. TikTok is. You see what I mean? So
this is the kind of advocacy campaigns or reach that we are talking about.
So Twitter has 3.5 million subscribers in Pakistan. TikTok has 36 million, 37 now. So they
might as well be the largest platform in the next
5 years when you talk about.
So yeah, approaches need
to come from that elitist sort of space where we are talking about climate as something that we'd like to do, to the point where we talk about it as something that we need to do, and for the people that matters, like you sir rightly pointed out.
Thank you so much. We have online question from that is addressed to Mr. Ahmad Rafay. There's a question that from an advocate. Also, okay, this is from Saida Salwa Zedi. She says, I am being a practicing lawyer. I discovered that young lawyers are not concerned about environmental law and a little awareness they have on the topic. Shouldn't there be more work done to improve legal literacy in the climate change domain?
Look, our environmental laws are 32, 35 sections. I mean, they're 8 or 9 pages. These are not incredibly complicated pieces of legislation. You don't need to have a year-long sort of diploma to be able to appreciate what the nuances of the law are. I was just answering this question. Rozi roti ka sawal hai. Environmental law doesn't pay much, at least not in comparison to things like banking law, tax law. And I think that's what draws people to the profession at some level. And that's just the reality of it. But I did want to respond to a couple of the other comments because I did look up Pakistan's largest advertisers: Unilever, Procter & Gamble, Nestle, GlaxoSmithKline, and Colgate Palmolive. These people are complicit. The media is complicit. One of the reasons why the schools in Islamabad are not screaming about climate change is because watch what's on TV. Last year, when 33 million Pakistanis were out of their home, forced out by a biblical flood, our mainstream television, night after night, Chief of Army Staff ki transfer, Tosha Khana ki ye ghadiyan, that's what we were focusing on. There are still 10 million Pakistanis homeless because of last year's floods. And what the hell are we talking about? Again, Tosha Khana. This is the media complicity, especially the news media funded by these advertisers are deliberately distracting you and misinforming you about what the reality is. That's why it's not happening. Look, with 30 million Pakistanis out of their homes because of a flood, are you going to tell me Pakistanis don't understand what climate change is? I bet you the average Pakistani knows better than most that the impure water or the impure air that they're breathing has serious repercussions on their health. But it feels like no one cares because our world is busy selling lawn by these textile companies that are taking our water and exporting it. So one of the reasons why we don't have strong environmental laws is because we don't hold the people who are truly the environmental criminals to account. We want to take action. You want to take action, start calling out people, your friends who own coal-fired cement plants. Start calling out your friends who have a diesel generator in their home. Start calling out your friends who have an SUV because they consume 4 times more petrol than the average car. No, unless accountability for those very few people who are disproportionately damaging the environment isn't carried through, the rest of the people won't feel that there is a sense of environmental community. It's that simple. Some heads have to roll.
Thank you. Next round of questions, and then we'll be moving forward to the vote of thanks. जी, आपका था एक question. जी, just a minute. जी, एक आपका लेंगे और जी सर आपका और फिर आपका 4 बस उसके बाद we'll have to wrap up and then you can हम over tea break हम लोग communicate कर सकते हैं. जी आपने introduction देना है, please I'll request keep it brief please. Thank you.
This is Ahmad I'm from Baig. So my question is towards Asad, Mr. Asad. So I share the pessimism towards social media with you. The main thing is click activism that came up in Arab Spring, and still today, even with the environment, it's bust and boom. So social media picks up on one topic and then it disappears. Like you mentioned about fashion industry, I was working at H&M. They had that pressure from the people, but what they did was only the tags which had green logos. Those are being made the same way. So where's the accountability there? So what's your opinion on that?
जी सर आपका क्वेश्चन.
अच्छा मेरा नाम अतहर हुसैन है. मैं सेंटर फॉर क्लाइमेट रिसर्च एंड डेवलपमेंट कॉम्स यूनिवर्सिटी में काम करता हूँ. मेरे ख्याल से अल्टीमेटली हमें यूथ को भी एंगेज करना चाहिए. एब्सोल्यूट नो एंगेजमेंट, एब्सोल्युटली जीरो. तो मैं यूथ लाया हूँ उससे टेस्ट करता हूँ क्वेश्चन करें मेरी तरफ से. पैनलिस्ट यंग ही है सारे.
जी एक इनका क्वेश्चन है.
Basically, what I want to address is, you were talking about audience. Basically, audience क्या होती है? आपने एक वीडियो लगानी है, audience जहाँ उससे ड्रामा मिलेगा, audience उस साइड जाएगी. We need to build a community. Community की proper guidelines होती हैं. We need to do some search engine optimization, जहाँ पर हम उन्हें authentic data एक ही search पे provide कर सकें. तो हमें community create करने की जरूरत है. We don't need an audience, क्योंकि audience हमेशा उस part पे जाएगी जहाँ मैंने उसे बिल्डिंग गिरती हुई दिखानी है, जो भी जहाँ पर इन उर्दू भी से तमाशा, जहाँ तमाशा हमें एक कम्युनिटी बिल्ड करनी है जहाँ पर हम हार्ट टू हार्ट बात कर सकें. और कम्युनिटी इस तरह उसके अंदर हम सब्सक्रिप्शन प्लान्स ला सकते हैं दैट यू हैव टू पे 100 रुपीस और 10 रुपीस पर मंथ. तो इससे काफी चेंजेस आ सकते हैं. बट वी नीड टू बिल्ड अ कम्युनिटी. वी डोंट नीड एन ऑडियंस.
जी सर आपका क्वेश्चन.
जी डॉक्टर फाहिम खोका फ्रॉम NUML. So working on climate change issues. So I will definitely support this lady, Kissa. So the question is not whether we can, how the social media can be instrumental. The question is how sustainable this could be, impression, how long. So over the years, over the time I've seen that, so this impression is a very like a bubble type. So hype is created, hype is gone. Nobody cares about that. So the thing is that how we can make it sustainable that can be instrumental in change. So now I would like to just take this opportunity to give a message for the youth. All these tools and information, pool of information, should not be to realize the change, rather it should be to change yourself. to change the mindset, then it will be. And definitely the real changes through the conventional method, like the outreach, that will give you a swift revolutionary transition to change the mindset. Unless we have this change in mindset, it's not going to work. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ji, sir, aapke students mein se, ji.
Actually, we haven't any basic education in our schooling system, and our children, we have to, we are not going to address this, that we have to teach our students from primary level to metric level, that they should, that how we should contribute in our environment, and how कि हम कैसे मतलब अपने environment को pollution से रोक सकते हैं. हमें चाहिए कि मतलब अपनी छोटे मतलब lower classes से start करें, और lower classes से लेके upper classes तक हम मतलब ये metric तक students को समझाएं. Students को लेके हम इस पे कोई बात नहीं कर रहे. तो हम इस पे, अगर हम इस पे कोई seminars वगैरह ये engage करें, या स्कूलों में मतलब उनको कोई letters या ये चीजें दें, तो ये बेहतर नहीं होगा आपके ख्याल से?
जी सर, पहला क्वेश्चन आपसे है तो
जी. So
I think मैं just उर्दू में जवाब देता हूँ आपको.
आपने specifically platform accountability की बात की, वो बात मैंने भी की.
The point is
कि this is a big question. It's there is a question mark on the statement. I don't know how this will be done, because frankly speaking, when we talk about the government, so let's talk about GDPR type scenario where the EU,
the whole of the EU ka weight jo hai, wo it's behind the legislation, and they're making platforms accountable. Misinformation is a small part of it, chalo, but still there.
And generally harm and so on. People fall, let alone anything, right? Number one. Number two, again, my question, apart from government, has there been any
concentrated effort by the government of
Pakistan to push back on misinformation, specifically climate misinformation? Obviously not. There has never been, like I said, a test of the inoculation theory, for instance. And there, by the way, many, many theories. It's just one reference
that I'm giving out, right? Number one.
Number two, I think the idea really is not about, frankly speaking, कि क्या करना चाहिए.
मेरे ख्याल में the idea is कि सब कुछ करना चाहिए and सब कुछ करना पड़ेगा, because frankly speaking, when we talk about audiences, they're people.
So you cannot have a bunch of people or a majority of people disagreeing with the idea of climate change, and while you have your own community and you kind of working within that community, and so it doesn't work like that. And again,
in a fun way, if I'm to talk about it,
although it's a very serious subject, but just to sort of make a connection with the young people here, younger than me, yeah, just अगर एक काम आज करेंगे ना आप, या over the weekend कभी time मिलेगा, तो do watch that movie that I was talking about.
Don't Look Up. You know, you'll exactly understand what we are talking about here. You'll exactly understand how
there is it's not just about activism on social media, because when you are activating for it, there are other people who are also mobilizing for the exactly opposite thing. If you're asking for, let's say,
there is a need to push for climate change, there are 100 million other people who are saying it's
absolute bullcrap. You see what I mean? So it's not essentially about building audiences. It's
not about creating communities. It's essentially about getting the message out there and getting people to see what it's real. Because clearly what they are saying is not true. You see what I mean, right? And there has been, my point is that when it comes to this,
or again, मेरे पास क्योंकि time अभी थोड़ा सा short है, otherwise I would have pulled exactly those sort of theories that I was talking about. But the social media companies, like Rafay said, exactly like the mainstream
media, are also accomplices. They are accomplices in a much bigger way than the local media or the mainstream media within Pakistan. So when you talk about sort of making them accountable, we are not just saying कि उनको जुर्माना करने, fine करने. We are talking about a framework
where we kind of are able to push back on this kind of organized propaganda against the climate misinformation, against the climate change and the climate reforms and so on. So like I said, it's a much bigger debate, and इसमें कोई एक तरीका नहीं होगा कि आपने just
you just
take this lane and then you
get home. No, you'll have to figure out a bunch of strategies and you'll have to deploy them together to talk about it. Like I said, बहुत सारी intersectionalities हैं.
किस किस को आप रोकेंगे? एक एंटरटेट को बंद किया, अभी 10 और आ जाएंगे इसकी जगह पे, देखिएगा. When they'll talk about the same things, they'll talk about having 30 Bugattis in one go and like 40 women in participating in the, so all of this misogynist crap is in one way or another linked to the whole idea of masculinity, supporting the idea of who's had, just one example, right? इसी तरह आप 10 intersectionalities निकाल सकते हैं इसके अंदर से. So the point is you need to think about all of this. Just आपने सेमिनार की बात की, सिर्फ 2 सेमिनार कराने से मेरा नहीं ख्याल कि इसमें कोई बात बनेगी, unless you take people as on board and allies. जिस तरह औरत मार्च ने इस दफा जो इस्लामाबाद वाला उनका औरत मार्च था, they were focused on climate action and I was very happy to see that कि वो they understand the intersectionalities and they were talking about it. So we need to bring on board the allies like this. We also need to find allies within the media. Media is not all bad. I'm sure बहुत सारे साफी आपके within the communities ऐसे मिल जाएंगे जो कि आपको cause को support करेंगे. So all of these intersectional elements need to come together for the change to happen. This is all what I was saying.
Thank you. I wish कि Pakistan maybe we get to see movies on climate change. जैसे Don't Look Up की आपने suggestion दी. So hopefully जब हम में से ही कोई आगे इस field में जाए, तो हम लोग इस पे movies बनाएं और project करें what is actually happening on ground. And I think we'll have a lot to portray to the world. So with this, I'll request Dr. Sajid Amin. He's the Deputy Executive Director Research at SDPI for a formal vote of thanks.
Assalamualaikum ji. Very good afternoon, SDPI से, and I'm sorry कि मैंने बहुत लेट ज्वाइन किया. मुझे असल में अभी बताया गया सेमिनार जो है वो चल रहा है. By training I am a macroeconomist, but at heart I am a macro climate change student actually. और यहाँ से मुझे लगता है कि एक चीज जो हम बात कर रहे हैं उससे जो जुड़ी हुई है, हम शायद ये तो कह रहे हैं कि मीडिया एक्म्प्लिस्ट है, हम शायद उससे भी ज्यादा है. हमने क्लाइमेट चेंज को शुरू में ग्लेशियर मेल्टिंग का इशू बना दिया सिर्फ, बाद में हमने 1.5 डिग्री सेंटीग्रेड का बना दिया, या ज्यादा से ज्यादा हम आके पॉल्यूशन पर रुक गए. हमने इसको आम आदमी की आम जिंदगी से लिंक ही नहीं किया है. आज भी अगर डिस्कशन जो मैंने सुनी है 20 मिनट की, वो पोल्यूशन से आगे नहीं जा रही. मुझे क्या लगे, पोल्यूशन से अगर एक तालाब गंदा हुआ है तो मुझे क्या फर्क पड़ता है? मुझे डायरेक्ट तो कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा उससे. तो मैं क्यों करूंगा किसी चीज पे बात, या मैं उसको क्यों सीरियस लूंगा अगर मेरा डेली लाइफ ही मुतासर नहीं हो रही है उससे. तो मुझे लगता है हम जो बात कर रहे हैं ना कि स्कूलों में इस पे बात नहीं हो रही, क्यों नहीं हो रही? इसलिए कि हमने इसकी कोई पॉलिटिकल कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी डेवलप ही नहीं की क्लाइमेट चेंज की. हमारी फ्रेमिंग वो आम आदमी से लिंक ही नहीं कर रही है. जब तक मुझे ये नहीं पता चलेगा कि मेरे बच्चों का रोजगार, उनकी सेहत, उनकी पॉवर्टी, उनकी इनइक्वालिटी, मेरे हाउस होल्ड एक्सपेंडिचर्स, मेरी इनकम, वो लिंक है क्लाइमेट चेंज से, मैं इसको सीरियस नहीं लूंगा, ना मैं स्कूलों में इसको पढ़ाऊंगा. तो आई थिंक जो पहला है वो शायद हमें थोड़ा सा जो बात हम कर रहे हैं कि इसको एडवोकेसी करनी है, वेरी राइटली, बट आई वाज टॉकिंग टू आदिल नजम कपल ऑफ वीक्स बिफोर, और मैं उनसे कहता कि सर आपने क्लाइमेट चेंज को 1.5 डिग्री से आगे जाने नहीं दिया पाकिस्तान में. क्लाइमेट चेंज इज नो मोर एन एनवायरमेंटल इशू, इट्स मोर एन इकोनॉमिक इशू एक्चुअली. It's no more an environmental risk, it's a macroeconomic risk. तो हमें, मुझे लगता है एडवोकेसी की जब हम बात करें तो गवर्नमेंट के लिए क्या मैसेज होगा और आम आदमी के लिए क्या मैसेज होगा, हमें ये बड़ा क्लियर रीफ्रेम करना होगा इश्यूज को. आप गवर्नमेंट को जितना मर्जी बताएं कि ऐसे ग्लेशियर्स मेल्ट होते हैं या पोल्यूशन होती है, हम गवर्नमेंट को जब तक ये नहीं बताएंगे कि आपका जो टैक्स रेवेन्यू है वो डायरेक्टली डिपेंडेंट है ऑन क्लाइमेट चेंज, गवर्नमेंट इस पे कोई काम नहीं करेगी. क्यों वो रिफॉर्म्स लेगी? जिस दिन हम ये कन्विंस कर दें गवर्नमेंट को कि आपका टैक्स रेवेन्यू, आपकी फिस्कल स्पेस लिंक है क्लाइमेट चेंज से, अगर आप इसको बेहतर करेंगे तो आपका रेवेन्यू बढ़ेगा, पॉवर्टी कम होगी, तब आई थिंक शायद वो उसको सोच सकेगी उसके अंदर. तो दैट वाज जस्ट वन पॉइंट आई वांटेड टू मेक एज एन इकोनॉमिक्स बैकग्राउंड, माय बायस एक्चुअली as an economist. ये बहुत अच्छी एफर्ट है जो हम ये कर रहे हैं ट्वीट फॉर क्लाइमेट। और जब मुझे लगता है कि हम ट्वीट फॉर क्लाइमेट की थी, बड़ा अहम यहाँ से पॉइंट आया था कि जो बाकी फोरम्स हैं मैसेजेस के वो शायद और भी ज्यादा इफेक्टिव हो सकते हैं। बट मुझे लगता है जो सिंबॉलिक एक मैसेज यही है कि जो तमाम मीडिया टाइप्स हैं जो भी कम्युनिकेट कर सकें वो इसके अंदर जो है वो एंगेज होनी चाहिए। सो आई जस्ट क्लोज विद 3 पॉइंट्स कि हमें right message for the right audience which is consistent and understandable, वो पहली रिक्वायरमेंट होगी किसी भी इशू के ऊपर एडवोकेसी की। क्लाइमेट चेंज में शायद हमें उसको बहुत ज्यादा एक रीफ्रेम और रीथिंक थ्रू करने की जरूरत होगी। दूसरा मुझे लगता है कि जो आपका राइट पार्टनर ऑफ चेंज है वो बड़ा क्रिटिकल होगा आइडेंटिफाई करना अगेन एट दी पॉपुलेशन लेवल पे जाके कि आपके टारगेट ऑडियंस है कौन सी। जब तक आप मैस स्केल कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी बिल्ड नहीं करेंगे, पॉलिटिकल कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी फॉर द डिमांड ऑफ रिफॉर्म्स इन क्लाइमेट चेंज, शायद हमारी डिस्कशन जो है वो डिस्कशन तक रह रही होंगी। आई अगेन हैव ए बिग थैंक यू टू ऑल ऑफ यू। प्लीज इग्नोर माय इकोनॉमिस्ट बाइसेस if you feel, but I do think we have to